Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined by a very special guest. He is a chronic pain biohacker, coach, and former NFL player, Mr. Daniel Esposito.
Hey,
How you doing today, Daniel?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm excited to talk to you and share my story with your listeners.
Hey, I'm kind of excited to hear, you got a pretty interesting background and everything.
Yeah. It's only you only know a part of it, so there's some other interesting things in there as well that I won't share.
Awesome. So the number one question the audience is probably wondering: who is Daniel Esposito?
Yeah. So in general, I'm a guy who likes movement. I've always been somebody that has been very fast, very flexible throughout my whole life, and that made me not only good at sports but just useful in people around me, kind of being in service to people, helping people do things. And then played a little in the NFL, 4 contracts, couple broken jaws, no full seasons. And then I started much later developing chronic pain, and at around the time my first son was born. So on top of all this stuff, and at the top of my list, I'm a father, right? And I've got 2 boys. And around the time my first son was born, I had left the banking industry. I was, really high performer in the banking industry. And then the banking crisis happened, and I was going through a breakup at the same time. And about a year later, had my first son. But I had started an energy brokerage. I broker commercial electricity and gases. Like a business that I started 15 plus years ago. And so I still hold on to that business. And, but during that time, I was like, I got to start making money. I'm making no money. I started this business and I've got a son on the way. And it's, during that time I started, it was the beginnings of all this autoimmune. They call it autoimmune. It's just inflammation and, poor food choices is really what it is. Autoimmune is a very specific thing that has been kind of given the Xerox label, across everything that looks like inflammation. But so I started suffering, I started out with restless leg syndrome, and then frozen shoulder, and then, kind of just chronic pain, stiffness throughout. But during this time, I had started eating a ton of pizza. I would order 2 pizzas a day, probably 3 days a week, as I was building this brand new business that I had no experience in, right? I had no idea what the energy business was about. I just knew it was a new industry in our state where I could potentially get ahead of everybody. And so, just working away really hard like I always do. And then, eating all this pizza and, starting to, feel this weird thing happen inside my body, but it didn't matter to me. I just eat more, and I like pizza, and I'm Italian, and I'm going to keep working. And then eventually what had happened is my lymphatic system stopped responding very well. When you have inflammation, part of the inflammation cycle, the inflammation healing cycle, not attacking you cycle, part of that, you give off lymph as a byproduct of the white blood cells, basically destroying the foreign invader. And it gives off lymph, and then the body puts it through the interstitium, then out through the lymphatic system. Well, I started just filling up with lymph, like just massively. My face looked like a pumpkin. I'm pretty, not to brag, but I'm pretty cut. You can see all my muscles for the most part. And all of a sudden now I can't see them. They're still under there, but you couldn't see them anymore. And I'm looking just heavy, brain fog, all that kind of stuff. And then so I'm like, I got to fix this. And the doctors, I went to, 5 visits to my doctors, and they're like, everything's normal on our side. And I'm like, but everything's not normal on my side. And so I started looking into ways to do this. And I started, looking at what everybody was pushing, like vegetables and superfoods and all this nonsense that has been sort of, driven into our heads that, vegetables are healthy. And so I started juicing fruits, vegetables, spinach, Swiss chard, drinking almond milk, but still eating poorly, thinking that somehow doing the one thing was going to heal me. But it turns out that when you juice these vegetables, you create kidney stones all throughout your soft tissue in your body. So these plants, especially spinach, Swiss chard, and beets, they have a plant defense chemical known as oxalic acid. And oxalic acid, basically, when it gets into your kidney and starts pulling in calcium, becomes a kidney stone. So when you juice these things, you've basically allowed this nanoparticle to leak out through your gut, and then they just kind of go wherever they want to go and start building kidney stones everywhere throughout your body. So now the little bit of stiffness, I would say little bit of stiffness, that's probably a 6 out of 10, turned into a 10 out of 10. These things are ripping me up on the inside. They basically don't let your body utilize sulfur or iron. They turn your cells into bone producing cells. So they'll actually, little nanoparticle get inside your cell, depolarize the mitochondria, and then turn it into an osteoblast or a fibroblast. So that's going to produce more bone. And things went really downhill quickly after that. And so I probably lived that way for 5 or 6 years, not really knowing what to do next. And then I had another son coming, and with my current partner, and she's a little younger than me. I'm 53. My youngest son is 8, so I'm an older father, right? And I'm at the gym. I'm 265 pounds. When I say pain, pain isn't even the word. It's like you can't move, you can't reach for things. Every time you try to do something, it feels like you're skinning your knees, but on the inside, like it feels like you're on fire, like rubbing against gravel. And so it was about 3 months until he was born. And I just said out loud to the universe, I said, I'm going to fix this. And maybe I said, I got to fix it. I don't know what it was, but it's time to figure this out. And then for the next year, and this is why chiropractors and stretch lab and things like that are not as effective as they could be. For the next year, I just started trying to stretch myself apart, just stretch. And what I would find is I'd hear all this click, and I'd get some relief. It'd click, 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 and get some relief. And then, but the next day it was right back to where it came. And so, and the reason for that, so, I think this is super important, is inflammation leaves behind a fibrin, right? A fibrin is kind of like the scar tissue, or you might call it a stitch. If you're an older person, your grandmother would call it a stitch. But these proteins get stuck inside your tissue where the bleeding or the invader was. But they're like a bungee cord. But they're also like fishing line and plastic. It's kind of a mix of all these things together. It's a viscoelastic polymer. So you can stretch it like an accordion, but it's going to pull right back, right? And until you cleave the chemical bonds that are holding these things together, the body is going to have a really tough time breaking them down mechanically, almost near impossible, right? So anyway, so for a year I was stretching, and I'm still 265 pounds. I got all this stuff going on. And I was fortunate to run into a friend of mine who saw me limping, and we were at a networking event. And she's like, Dan, what's going on? I said, I played baseball about 8 months ago. I was playing catcher, and my knees swelled up, and they never went back down. I said, no matter what I've tried to do, I've had, the fluid drained out of them a couple times. So
like your bursa sac?
What's that?
It was like your bursa sac?
Yeah, the back of it.
Yeah.
That's what they say it is. But maybe that's where they're going to get in some of the lymph. But really, it's just all over in that area.
Yeah.
Because it's a gooey liquid. It doesn't just sit in your bursa sac. It can kind of go everywhere. But so she's like, well, why don't you rub some castor oil on your knees? And I'm like, okay. What are you talking about? Sounds like some old wives' tale. You want me to take essential oils or something? I didn't even know what castor oil was. So, but, I had just started the stretching and foam rolling, and I'm telling everyone you should foam roll. There's something going on. I don't know what it is, but she's telling me with the same exuberance, like, you need to do this castor oil. So for the first time in my life, I took somebody's advice. And I went to CVS, got some castor oil, rubbed it on my knees, rubbed it on my lymph areas. And the next day, I mean, after being like this for 6 years, all the swelling in my knees went away. All the swelling in my body was going away. And I started just blowing stuff out of my face for 3 days. I was like, oh my gosh, what? Like, I just cleaned out my lymphatic system. That, no idea. That wasn't my intention. I was just looking for a little relief on my knees. So I went at that point. I was probably having, maybe if I was lucky, 1 day a month where I felt like I was productive. I could work. Maybe I was social. To having about half the month where I was able to do that. But I was still suffering from all the chronic pain. It's just that the pressure in my head from the glymphatic system, which is in your head, subsided. And so I was like, okay, great, that works. And the first question was, who am I? I kind of got right into my story. This is part of who I am now, man. Yeah. So the next thing that happened was a few months later, the Phillies having a game. My friend came up from Tennessee, got all of our friends together, and we went to the Phillies game. And I'm not a big drinker. I had maybe 2 beers, and I felt really bad. And I started thinking, I don't know, maybe I'm acidic, because I'd heard about acidity, and I don't know. I was just throwing darts at this point. And I had asked Kate, I said, hey, can you run down to 7-Eleven and grab me some of those essential waters, right? And so maybe I was just dehydrated. Maybe it wasn't the acidity. I'm not really sure. But I had drank that water, and I felt immediately better. And so I was like, okay, I need to learn about hydration. And so that led me down a path that I hope is similar to people listening to this podcast, that they follow a similar type of path. I found a podcast. It was Dr. Mercola, who is one of the first naturopath doctors on social media. You know, he was always labeled a quack, but he's pretty brilliant guy. He had another doctor on called, his name was Zach Bush. Zach Bush is a really guy for you to follow, especially Christians. He's very Christian centered and used to work in the modern medical sort of side of things and has moved over to more natural remedies. Really brilliant guy. He was talking about hydration, but hydration at the cellular level, right? Pulling water into the cell to actually cause you to be hydrated. So when I started listening to this, I was like, okay, one, all the water that I drink is acidic. I'm drinking out all these acidic water bottles, and I don't know the pH of my blood. I have no idea what's going on. But what struck me was the cell. And I started thinking, well, everything's made up of a cell. So if I just make the cells healthy, will I start getting healthier? So I started researching, how do you make a healthier cell? And one of the things, and it was also on the Mercola podcast, was near-range infrared light, right? And I was like, okay, that's supposed to stimulate the mitochondria of the cell, make it a little more functional, a little more active. And so I started going to a place and doing some red light therapy. And I would.
So what exactly is that?
Yeah,
red light therapy.
Yeah, so it's a certain wavelength of light that penetrates deeper into the skin than the visible light. It penetrates much deeper into the layers, and it's, I don't remember I think it's 680 to 820 or 800 wavelength. But what it was actually, so I'll tell you what my experience was. I would walk out of that session, and then I would hear a click, sounded like a hollow glass, and then a little bit of relief. I was like, oh, wow. So like maybe I'd get 1 or 2 of those that would happen. I was like, wow, what just happened? So I'd go back again to see if I could repeat that. It would happen again. And so then eventually I bought a near-range infrared light because I don't want to keep paying to go to a place. Yeah. But what was happening after all the research that I've done is that light creates an energy exchange. Everything in your body is basically working off of electrical currents, energy. What it's doing is basically adding an electron to these chemical bonds of these things that are holding me together, that are binding me together, causing pain, and weakening that bond, right? And so once the bond is weakened, your body can now break it apart. And then it starts removing it very little, right? So it's like you get the split, then the body, opens, you get a little relief in the muscle, and then the body sends up these enzymes and proteins and stuff that start taking away that whatever that misfolded protein is, right? It's very slowly because it can't overwhelm your body. So I was like, great, that's something, but it's such a little thing. And at the time, I didn't realize that my entire body was dealing with fibrosis. I just thought I had a little stiffness here and there that was impinging me. It literally every muscle fiber in my body had a problem. And so I was like, okay, that's great. So this is good. And, I'm on to something. Let me listen to the next thing in the Mercola podcast. And it was about fasting. So I was doing these short fasts, this intermittent fasting, and nothing was happening. I was like, all right, well, that doesn't seem to have any impact. And then the same friend who told me about the castor oil says, you should try a 3-day fast. And so now I'm challenged, right? So of course I'll step up to the challenge and I'm like, all right, I can do it. So I did a 3-day fast that weekend. And then day 2, click, 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 all throughout my back, around my knees, stuff. And I was like, what the heck is that? What's happening? Same thing that happened with the near range infrared light, but in much greater mass, right? And the reason for that is your body. So let's talk about the inflammation cycle first, because I think this is really important that people understand what inflammation is and where it starts. And then I'll circle back to the fasting. So the cell wall, we had discussed earlier before we got on the pod, must be comprised of a lipid membrane of omega-6s and omega-3s. They should be an equal ratio, 1-to-1. The average American is 15-to-1 of the highly inflammatory omega-6s, right? And so that means when you have a little stressor against the cell wall, it's going to cause a much bigger inflammatory response than is necessary. Then what happens is it gets the cytokines and the C-reactive proteins, and they start targeting the offender. So then the white blood cell, well, the glue happens, the clot, which becomes a hard protein. But then now these invaders are targeted, the white blood cells come into the area and start destroying them. They give off lymph. You'll see that as swelling, right? Once all the invaders are gone, the white blood cells retreat, and then the red blood cells come back into the area. Now, the problem with that is not only do you have the fibrin, which is part of the inflammation, is that clot. Every time you create fibrin through inflammation, you create a collagen response. Most people aren't eating for healthy collagen. They're missing many of the cofactors. And because of that, instead of it becoming like rubber glue, it becomes like Elmer's glue in that area. Now, because of that fibrin and collagen mesh, a lot of times those red blood cells can't get back into the muscle, and you start getting atrophy of the muscle, right? So then what happens after the white blood cells retreat, red blood cells come back into the area at 20 hours of fasting, and it is when your liver releases enzymes because they're starving. They're either digesting food or going to go around your bloodstream and look for these misfolded proteins, the scar tissue, the fibrin. And then they're going to eat it a little bit. They're going to clip it at the chemical bond. The chemical bond becomes weak, and now it can become broken down. Otherwise, medicine will tell you a fibrin is a tough, insoluble protein. Well, that's not true. It's only insoluble until it's cleaved, and then it becomes soluble. So, the supplement that I created, Flexibility Fuel, has enzymes in it that mimic this action that helps the body promote a healthier inflammation cycle. That's just like one of the things that's in it. So most people aren't going to fast for 3 days, right?
Yeah.
And, it's going to take them a while to get there, right? And, and sometimes you mess up and have a, bite of your kid's pizza on accident on day 1.5, and you've ruined the whole thing. But so, so when we talk about that other collagen response that's going to happen in there, it becomes, when you feel around in your body and you feel these muscles that seem like they're all glued together in big lumps, that's the collagen in there, right? So if you have 4 amino acids that build collagen and 4 cofactors that tell this stuff how to do its job correctly. Tell me when the last time you had copper was.
Copper?
Yeah.
Have no clue.
No clue. It's in
No
very
clue.
few foods, right? So
Yeah.
copper is one of them. Vitamin C. When's the last time you had vitamin C? And we'll even include a
Probably today sometime.
Okay, so vitamin C, crucial. Most people are very vitamin C deficient. And vitamin C, so vitamin C you basically need to have every day.
Yeah.
Right? And red bell peppers are actually the highest source of vitamin C.
Huh.
I just eat those raw like an orange. Manganese and zinc. Now, zinc is really important because zinc helps the body break down the old collagen as well. Right. So, you have to know, like, if you're going to have an inflammatory lifestyle by eating manufactured foods, which 75% of our diet is manufactured foods. Well, not only is it inflammatory, but it's also basically poisoning you with, all the additives and things like that. So you're going to cause this big inflammation response. And then that's going to cause poor collagen synthesis. And then you're going to have this gluey fibrosis muscle that is causing pain. Now, the pain, most people in modern medicine is going to say you have a dysregulated nervous system, or the central nervous system is overacting. It's not true.
So what does that kind of mean?
So they say fibromyalgia is a central nervous system processing disorder, right? So what is really happening is all this fibrous tissue, all of this glycated tissue, inflamed tissue, become dehydrated tissue becomes very hard, right? In your muscles, and especially in your fascia, you have these things, part of the central nervous system, that are pain receptors. The pain receptors are constantly being aggravated, sending a valid signal to the brain, right? The doctor's going to tell you, no, that can't be. You've got something wrong with the whole wiring. It's just not true. It would exhibit as way more, the outcomes would look different. You'd have tremors. You'd have trouble standing up. If your central nervous system was actually impaired, it wouldn't just stay localized to just creating more pain. That's just not how the body works. So now you're told, oh, it's your genetics or it's your central nervous. They don't tell you it's your diet. They don't tell you that inside your body, because of what this world has done to you, has caused you to be super stiff, super dehydrated, massively inflamed, malnourished, dehydrated, right? They don't look at that stuff at all, which is the most obvious stuff. They just say, oh, there's something wrong with you, and here's a pill that's going to help you manage those symptoms. And then, like me, they wanted to do 4 joint replacements on me. They're like, when you turn 50, you're going to need, I think they want to start with my shoulders and then go to my knees. And at 50, instead of getting the joint replacements, I became a 2-time United States Track and Field Masters National Champion. I think I'm like a 5-time All-American at this point. And last year I was ranked in indoor in the top 15 in the world, right? So this is going from not being able to literally walk down a flight of stairs some days, where I was, it was a rough life. So I decided, and through this journey, there was some really interesting things where I know I was guided by the light, by God. Maybe Jesus had a play, his hand in there, but I knew that I had to share this information with everybody else, because it's the most obvious thing. And when I talk to doctors about this, all of them agree with me, but almost all of them. One guy I'm fighting on Instagram right now. But when you really lay it out and show them, the studies, the evidence, all that stuff, it's impossible to deny what my theory is, right? Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to be helpful for every single person, but because they're the most common events that are happening in our body, mainly due to our diets, as well as certain vaccines that maybe some people have gotten recently, right? They cause a lot of inflammation. There's a lot of studies out there that show, that these are causing the cells to constantly leak those cytokines, which starts the inflammatory process. So I just knew that I had to share just not only my knowledge with everybody, but make it simple. And I created a supplement 100% based in science, right? That does what I want it to do. It provides a catalyst to weaken the chemical bonds of the 5 pain makers that I've identified, which are inflammation, which is the fiber and poor collagen synthesis, glycation, which is interesting. There's a biblical tie-in there. Oxidative stress and oxalates, which are the things you get the plant defense chemicals from spinach. But so here I am. I've released the supplement last year, and been doing a bunch of podcasts and educational events online, and just trying to shed light on like what's really happening with chronic pain, chronic disease.
Well, yeah, because you see that so much nowadays that people are in chronic pain and they're just bloated.
Yeah. Well,
like
that's the inflammation.
And bloated because they can't move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's tough because, I have an ego, I'm trying to get rid of it. It's almost gone. But, when I started looking like this, girls stopped looking at me. I wasn't, I was still trying to push through it, and I would just be in so much pain, and I still go to the gym, and it's just nearly impossible to not only work out, but to just like bend over and pick up garbage off the floor. Like there's this theory, it's called the spoon theory with chronic pain. It's like you've got, however many spoons you got for the day, and you can only use a few of them until the chronic pain becomes too much. So, things like, picking something up off the floor is like, well, I'm not going to do that. Even leaving a light on. Here's a funny, you leave the light on, and that if you stop, when you stop, all your muscles are going to tense up, and then you got to turn around, right? And that's going to cause all of this pain. And it's like, you're just like, forget it. I'm just, I'm going to leave the light on. So, as you work through the program, you get more and more spoons, basically. It doesn't happen. There's no magic pill. It doesn't, nothing happens overnight, because the body would not be able to remove all of this stuff at one time, or even in mass. It can only do it in small amounts. But the good thing is once the first thing goes, which it usually happens very quickly. If somebody decides to go do a 3-day fast right now, they're going to get a lot of this clicking, right? And then they're going to be like, okay, there's something here. Like now I need to look further into these things. But once something goes for the first time in your life, or during this experience of chronic pain, you'll have hope, and hope just keeps pushing you forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, it's so crazy that you're talking about like the red light therapy, because I've heard like a lot of athletes talking about that for recovery now, that they're using that as part of their recovery, for their body.
Yeah. I literally sleep under one every night. I have it on a stand over my bed.
Yeah.
I sleep under it every night. And especially, people can call me crazy, but we all know that the skies are being sprayed with chemtrails, and it's blocking out the sun. And one of the wavelengths that's blocking out are the healing wavelength, the red light. So it's just like this intentional, slow. It's like the frog in the pot, right? We're just slowly getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and they keep telling us that we just don't know why this is, but it's so obvious.
Yeah.
Look around it and get a little bit of information on how the body doesn't want anything inside of it that's foreign. It only wants biological stuff, right? And even some of that stuff will cause a little bit of inflammation, which is good, right? You want a little bit of inflammation because that creates stronger people through hormesis. But when you just overdo it, just like anything else, inflammation is dose dependent. You want a little bit of inflammation. You don't want massive inflammation. And we're just surrounded by an environment, food, water, air now that we breathe, that causes not just a little bit of inflammation, but systemic massive inflammation. And it usually happens fairly slowly. So we never blame our food, right? Unless you've been in a car accident or a slip and fall or, something like that. It's just happens slowly over time. So you look at your peanut butter, you're like, well, it can't be the peanut butter because I've been eating peanut butter since I was a kid. Well, the peanut butter today is not the same peanut butter as before. Right, it's loaded with seed oils, rancid peanuts. It's got oxalates in it. And so I think a lot of the problem is people have to admit that they've been duped. They've been putting these things in their body that shouldn't be put in there. And we're basically doing this to ourselves in a way by not seeking out actual good information. And the problem is there's not a lot of good information out there.
Yeah.
There's some here and there. Like just, we talk about diet, right? There's all these fad diets like keto and Atkins and carnivore and vegetarianism, veganism. The truth is, and I put a spreadsheet together that details all of these foods and nutrients and where you get them from and the most bioavailable sources. There's 90 things that we need, right? That's it. 91 if you count water, right? So there's 16 vitamins, 9 essential amino acids, 3 fats, and the rest are minerals. And really, you're going to look at your trace minerals there because those are the harder ones to get. So if you get all 90 of those things, your body has everything it needs to do to be healthy. Now, if you've got a problem, you're going to want to supplement with other things, right? To help remove those things. Maybe you want to have bigger muscles. Maybe you'll take a little more protein or whatever. But if you, throughout your entire life, have stuck with those 90, you would probably not have any health issues whatsoever because it creates everything else that you need. And they're essential vitamins, essential amino acids, essential fats, right? They say they're essential because they're essential. Like you have to have them.
Yeah. So what diet would you recommend? Like what foods would you recommend for people?
The 90. I mean, when you look at this spreadsheet, it's, I categorize it by your animal foods, fish, shellfish, like chicken and meat, fish, shellfish, nuts, legumes, vegetables, and fruits. When you look at this graph, it becomes very obvious that one, you're malnourished, right? And I don't mean a little bit malnourished, like you're massive.
Like all of us are malnourished, and just like all of us are dehydrated at some point too.
Even me, like I know what the chart looks like, and I'm not getting those. I'm not hitting those things all the time, and so I supplement because I know I'm going to hit. Methylated multivitamin. My flexibility fuel has all the essential amino acids in it. I eat a lot of fatty fish now and cod liver oil. And then for the minerals, I have a couple different mineral supplements that I'll throw in with my flexibility fuel. But if you stick to some other diet, you're just going to miss something, right? So if you stick to the 90, and there is a term for it, I think it's whole 90. I wasn't sure if I came up with it, and I just started researching it. It's like, oh, there's actually some dietary guideline out there. But if somebody signs up for my community, it's free. It's one of the free assets that I give them. It's like, so they can just download it off the Google Drive and then, have that and then make sure that I call it the world's greatest shopping list, right? Because let's go buy these things. Like, do I want a banana or do I want, which can cause some histamine, or do I want blueberries? That's an antioxidant. It's going to get rid of the oxidative stress. So, it's a really good free resource that I put onto where my coaching platform is.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with your supplement then?
Yeah. So it was just, I almost want to say I was falling forward the entire time. I had very few hiccups along the way. The 2 hiccups that I had, I'll talk about those first, was sulfur and N-acetylcysteine. Caused me personally a ton of anxiety. They're super effective though at basically resynthesizing the collagen, because the sulfur helps break down the collagen, and then your body will reuptake what it can use and get rid of the junk. And then N-acetylcysteine is a sulfur-based compound, but it creates glutathione in your body, and glutathione is the master antioxidant. And what that means is if you have oxidative stress, it means you have a free radical running around, right? An unpaired electron. It's going to stabilize it. So now it's not causing damage, right? So you need to have antioxidants in your body, and glutathione is your body's master antioxidant. So I do glutathione drips and get into a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. It's the most magical thing you'll ever do. If you want to progress fast, unfortunately, it's the most expensive thing in the whole program, right? It's
the hyperbaric chair.
I do it once a month. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know a lot of sports teams and everybody, they're switching to a lot of that, the hyperbaric chambers for recovery and everything.
Yeah. It's really good, man, because it just really gets the blood. When you breathe in, and most of us aren't breathing deeply enough as well. We lead sedentary lifestyles. When we take a deep breath, it's when we're about to move, right? And that gets the blood circulating. We don't move. We're in bed 6, 7, 8 hours a night. We're sitting at a desk 2, 3, 4, 8 hours a day, right? We're sitting on the couch a little bit. Maybe we get to the gym for an hour, and then are you doing cardio at the gym, or are you just working out? You know what I mean? Like, what are we really doing to breathe deeply? We're only breathing deeply enough at all times to support what our body needs, right? So if we're not moving, our body doesn't need it does need the oxygen, but it doesn't think that it needs the oxygen. So we're not getting enough good blood flow throughout our body, and that becomes a problem as well. So the hyperbaric oxygen chamber and deep breathing, especially through the nose, like deep nasal breathing is super, super important, because you want to be able to get you want to change the pH of your blood from it being acidic. So if every hour you just took 3 deep breaths in through your nose, you would change the pH of your blood, and it would become a better, a more base pH than being acidic.
Huh. So that's something pretty simple to like.
Yeah.
To be pretty effective. Just something so simple. Hey, every hour I need to breathe, take 3 deep breaths through my nose.
Yeah, here's another interesting thing about breathing through your nose. So let's say you eat this pizza and I eat the pizza. We both eat the pizza, and we're twins. We have the exact same body, except my nose is stuffed up and yours is not. You're breathing through your nose during the eating time and afterwards, and I'm only breathing through my mouth because my mouth is stuffed up, or my nose is stuffed up. Well, when you breathe through your nose, your body takes an amino acid L-arginine and converts it to nitric oxide. Nitric oxide prevents the clots, the fibrins from forming, from setting in, right? And you don't want that scar tissue or fibrin in there, right? So now I'm going to have more of an inflammatory, kind of the garbage that's left behind, than you will, because you're breathing through your nose, you're making sure that glue basically doesn't set in. So yeah, breathing through your nose is one of the most important things you can do. And God gave me a nose that doesn't always work well. So it was one of the I think the parts of my journey that was like, I got to give you all this stuff so you can figure it out for everybody else. Yeah.
Awesome. So what would you recommend for movement? Because I think we all understand that a lot of people aren't getting the movement they need throughout the day. They're not stretching enough.
Yeah, so stretching's not going to do anything unless you have a catalyst. Like, it really is, you're going to basically go nowhere, because once again, if you think the fibrin is like a bungee cord, so you're going to click, come back, right? It makes that noise. Yeah. You hear it cracking, you think it's your joints, but it's that plasticky viscoelastic polymer stretching out like a bungee cord and then pulling back in. It can stretch up to 300 times its length, right? And then go back. And then the collagen that you put together, the chemical bonds that hold collagen together are 7 times stronger than steel, right? So you're just not going to be able to break through it. In a lot of cases, you also get the collagen, and then you got that fibrin in the middle of it. So you really want to break down the fibrin, because that's causing the most pain, but you can't access it because you've got so much scar tissue, or it's not really scar tissue, it's just a lot of collagen built up in very thick layers, and you can't move your muscle enough to help to kind of move that around. So movement, in terms of movement, I think the most beneficial thing that people can do is just a workout called Tabata. So it's 20 seconds of going pretty hard on cardio, and then 10 seconds of rest, right? And then so that gets the heart rate up, it burns fat, it gets the blood flowing. But if you do it on a spinning bike, you've got no impact. Right. So to me, that right there is the best workout you can do if you're somebody that has fibromyalgia. It takes like 4 minutes and 20 seconds to get through it. Right. And it's scientifically been proven as the best way to lose weight. Because you're going high and low, high and low, high and low. And then if you're breathing through your nose during that time, when you breathe through your nose, your body is utilizing fat as its fuel source, because you're not under duress. When you breathe through your mouth, it's using sugars, glycogen, as its fuel source, right? Because you need that energy right now. But when you breathe through your nose, your body just goes to utilize fat. You settle down your parasympathetic nervous system, and everything's chill. So if you can force yourself when you're working out to breathe through your nose, you're going to have a lot better results in a lot of categories. Huh.
Interesting. What I want to get back here to this. So what type of training and mindset did it take to get you to the NFL?
Delusion. Right. Let me
But
tell
that's
you.
what a lot of people do not have, though, anymore.
Yeah. So there was a Stanford study that basically said that the most successful people are delusional. So they have a delusional belief in the outcome that they're trying to achieve. So let me go back to childhood real quick, because I think this kind of sets the stage for who I became. My parents got divorced very young. I've got an older sister, a younger brother, and then I've got two half brothers. They're my brothers, but my mother and my father had the three of us basically. And so they got divorced when I was about 4. My mom moved us from Philadelphia down to Florida. About a year later, my mom's got a new boyfriend, and he was an alcoholic, abusive, just a really bad guy. So I decided to move back to Philadelphia, lived there for a year, came back to Florida. Now my mom's with another guy. She ends up marrying him, 20 plus year Marine, alcoholic, abusive, right? So at this point, I'm in 5 elementary schools. So I'm moving around a lot. And the fastest way for me to make friends was through athletics, through sports, right? I was always the fastest kid on the playground, strongest kid, always presidential fitness award. I was just blessed with that ability, right? It just was very natural to me. I didn't have to work at it. And so that became a huge part of my identity. Was I'm an athlete. I'm somebody who thrives in situations where there calls for movement. And so, a couple moves later, I end up back in Philadelphia my senior year, and I decide to finally go out for football. And I didn't start playing football until I was a senior in high school. I was a baseball player for the most part before that, ran a little bit of track. And, they put me at fullback. I wanted to be a tailback. I was about 195 pounds running, probably a 4.40 as a senior in high school. But they put me at fullback. I'd get the ball like 8 times a game. My dad went up to the coach, he goes, Jeb, why don't you put this guy at tailback, give him a few more carries? And my head coach said, he's not a tailback. He doesn't have this, and kind of did his hips in some motion. And so, but 4 NFL contracts later, I proved that I am a tailback. And so, anyway, I walked on to a small school, Millersville. But before that, my senior year, before going to my freshman year of college, I lived in Northeast Philadelphia at the time. There was a little gym down the street. I mean, it was a terrible gym, but they were always professional. Like Charles Barkley would be in there sometimes, because the owner was the strength and conditioning coach for the Jets, right? And so he came up to me one day. His name was Greg McCready's. He came up to me and said, hey, Dan, there's a guy here who's in the NFL. He's a quarterback and he needs someone to throw to. You want to throw with him? I'm like, of course I want to throw with this guy. So I go there. I mean, this guy, when I tell you who it was, it's interesting, but I caught everything the guy threw at me, like literally everything except for one that hit me in the chest. I was like, holy cow. And then at the end of we had 5 sessions together, and he goes, you're pretty good. You can play in the NFL. So right there was all I needed. You know what I mean? That created the mindset. So I go into college, I walk on. I wasn't even offered a scholarship or even to come in during the normal summer camp. I walk on, and I let people know. So I'm going to play in the NFL, and they laughed at me. And I was like,
I bet they did. If you're walking on to like a small Division III school,
Division two.
Well, I bet they were laughing.
Yeah, but we had guys that went. We were always the top in Division II. So, but I get it, but they just didn't know who I was. They didn't, and so I didn't. So my junior year, I actually earned the starting position, but it was taken away from me 3 days before the game. I was told I was the starting running back, but the day of the game, I was somehow the 3rd string running back. I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to get my carries and I'm still going to be great, like whatever. But first game comes by, I got no carries. I was like, okay, what the heck is this? I'm clearly the best running back on the team in all facets. I wasn't the fastest. I was the 2nd fastest, but that guy was a little guy, right? And so I was like, all right, 2nd game comes around. I got no carries. So I said to my coach, my running back coach, he was a younger guy. I said, Hoagie, I said, what's going on, dude? Like, what's Espo, just stick in there. Your time's going to come. It's like, no. I need to know what's going on or I'm not playing football anymore. Like, I got to know. I said, so he's like, all right. And he told me because the head coach said, you're not a scholarship athlete. So the 2 scholarship guys are going to start ahead of you. And I was like, all right, well, at least you told me and I'm going to stick to my word. And I guess I'm just going to be a team player. I'm going to have to find another route to the NFL. But so, I mean, I would have like 1 shuttle pass for a 60-yard touchdown and get no carries, 1 carry for like 70 yards, and then I'd get no more carries in the game. Yeah, it was frustrating as hell. So then my senior year comes around. I'm still basically the 3rd string running back, which is insane to me. And first game, no carries. I was like, son of a, I'm a senior at this point. You know what I mean? Like I should get preference over the younger guy. And second game, I mean, we get all the way up to the, end of the first half, and our running backs just, and in these games, our running backs weren't doing well at all. So we finally get to the second game toward the end of the first half, and they put me in, and I just start rattling off big runs, big run, big run, big run. I had 156 yards, 136 yards, something like that, mainly in the second half of that game. I started the next game. I was offensive player of the nation, had like 326 yards. And then the scouts, start taking notice. I was named offensive player of the nation by the Don Hanson Football Gazette, which was the big, Division II football magazine going around at the time. And, had over 1,000 yards in basically like 6.5 games. And, the scouts always come out. They test every senior. They've got scouts everywhere going to every school. So I ran really good times in my 40. My bench press was always around, 225 for about 20. I catch everything that's thrown to me. I was calling audibles sometimes at running back. Like not really calling them, but telling the quarterback, hey, oh wait, And so, draft day comes around. Both days of the draft, I didn't get selected, and the Redskins invited me to camp without a contract. I was like, okay, great. So I go to camp, earn a contract in camp. And then a few months later, they signed Terry Allen. So they cut me to bring on Terry Allen. But then the first day of actual camp, mini camp, they brought me back into camp. I was having a great camp. And then we go to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. And I got into special teams the second half, the opening kickoff of the second half, and I'm running down. I'm pumped up. I'm first guy down, and I break my jaw in 2 places. I got hit. Some guy underneath my helmet, big offensive lineman guy, just speared me right here, and all these teeth went that way. It's kind of like that, and it clicked right here. I didn't fall down, and I played the whole game. So, just general pain isn't that big a deal to me. Chronic pain was terrible. And so, but at the end of that game, I got to go shake hands with that guy who threw me passes as a senior. It was Rich Gannon. He was the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. I was like, hey, nice. You're right. I made it. So, I mean, talk about a coincidence. Here's another interesting coincidence. So anyway, I get an injury settlement the next year, with my girlfriend at the time. And I'm like, all right, we're at a pizza place, and there's one of these bubblegum machines with the helmets in it. And I'm like, all right, next team that comes out of here is who I'm going to play for. So I put it in, Saints come out. Now, which is interesting because Saints, and anyway, so the Saints come out. 2 weeks later, my agent calls me, says, hey, Dan, the Saints want to work you out. I was like, and I was in bed with my girlfriend at the time. I said, the Saints want. We looked at each other like, what the heck? Like, that's crazy. So went there, had another really good preseason, had broken my jaw again. I got sucker punched by a linebacker that I was beating in one-on-one drills. And he just, punched me in practice one day, and it broke it again. I knew it was broken immediately. I come back the first day of camp. They cut me. I was like, son of a gun. And then they called me back the first day of the regular season. So I was there for about 4 or 5 weeks of the regular season. And then, but at that point, it's when, my shoulder was just super bad. It was like the first injury in my life that didn't heal. I knew I wasn't playing and blocking and doing all the stuff at the level that I needed to stay on the team, but I didn't want to tell them I was hurt either. Yeah. last guy in the door, it's a tough thing to go into the training room right away. So, yeah. And then so over the next bunch of years, and I had a surgery on that, and it helped it a little bit, but I was fine. So a lot of the doctors wanted to blame like the widespread chronic pain on my football career. I was like, this all happened 20 plus years after my football career. I said, barring the shoulder, problem that I had. And so that's basically my football career. And then, I kind of told you the story before about how I decided I was going to fix it. And yeah.
So what advice, because I work with a lot of high school, college age athletes.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to them when they have big dreams and nobody else believes in them?
Oh, yeah. So my mother's side of the family is like that, right? My father's side of the family is all small business owners, go and do things, So I was fortunate enough to have the negativity throughout my life that, you can't do that. You're not good enough for that. But, and then have people who excelled at things on the other side of my family. So you find a mentor, probably find somebody that does believe in you, a coach, somebody that's going to support your goals. Because if your family is not, I've got a son, he's 14, and he just went out for hockey last year. And he never skated before, and he loves hockey. And I know that he's never going to go play college hockey, right? He's just not going to catch up with these kids, but I'll never tell him that.
Yeah.
I don't want to like yuck this kid's yum before he gets out of the gate. Maybe he will, who knows? Maybe it just clicks for him one day and he becomes amazing. But, if you don't support their dream, it's like, just think of your own dream that wasn't supported. Right. It's not, you need someone to believe in you. And I always had my father in the back of my mind. I mean, my father's an amazing guy who thinks I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. And he always knew I was great, even though I didn't know that I didn't know I was great at the time. I looking back, I was like, geez, what a athlete that I was. But at the time, you're a kid, you don't know if you're good or not. Right. You don't you compare yourself with other kids who are like 14, 15. You don't realize half of them peaked already.
Yeah.
They're not going to develop anymore. And it's find somebody that does believe in you. And honestly, you don't even have to find someone external. For me, all I care about is my relationship with God. You're right. And I know that God believes in me. Right. Yeah. And so if you can, putting my faith in that has taken a lot of stress, a lot of weight off of my shoulders. Because before this process, and here's a couple interesting, tie-ins to my faith. Before this process, I was an atheist, and I was for sure that evolution was a thing. And then I had to start learning about DNA, right? Because your methylation cycle is controlled by your DNA, and that's how you utilize nutrition. And so I started going down those rabbit holes. It's not only for physical health, it's really important that your methylation cycle is working for mental health. Like there's certain things in your DNA that when your genes are a little bit impaired, it can misdiagnose as bipolarism, right? And so if you're not supporting certain genes, you're just going to have a massive amounts of anxiety, and people are going to think you're bipolar, but you're not. You're just in fight or flight at these inopportune times. But so you start realizing that if a gene mutates, it never mutates for the good, right? And you're telling me billions of genes have mutated to create the perfect being, right? And it just stopped making sense to me. And then, when I was a child, because of all the abuse that I was suffering from, I was certain that there could be no God looking out for me, right? And so I cemented that belief in two passages in the Old Testament. Don't eat swine, for it's unclean, and don't mix linen and wool. I said, how arbitrary these two rules are. And it turns out both of them have massive implications in chronic pain. I mean, not a little bit, but massive implications in chronic pain. So eating swine, pork, not only is it a never-ending decaying meat, and it harbors parasites and cysts that you cannot cook out, but it creates this thing in the body called glycation. So think of glycation as the film of protein on barbecue, when you've got the barbecue sauce and the meat and then that sticky film. When you eat pork, that happens inside on your muscles and on your fascia and inside your body. Your body can handle 15,000 of these events per day. One strip of bacon is 30,000, right? So now you're basically creating super glue and inflammation and oxidative stress, all three of the major pain makers, which is going to cause a poor collagen response as well. So it's causing, when you eat swine, it causes 4 of the things that happen to your body that go bad in massive amounts. I mean, I was talking to some guys on the podcast the other day. He said, oh, we had 1 pack of bacon left. We each had 9 pieces. I was like, well, what the heck is 9 times 30,000? You know, it was like you just caused all of this disruption internally and inside your body. And so in my supplement, there is a flavonoid in there called rutin, R-U-T-I-N, that basically, you know, once again, everything is energy. It's donating an electron to the glycation, causing it to open up and then letting the body kind of sand off the rest. It's not really sanding off. I use that as a, you know, visual, but it kind of breaks down the rest very slowly. But mixing linen and wool. So how could that make a difference, right? Well, fabrics have energy. Your body has energy. Everything's frequency, right? So our body has a resonance of about 80 to 100, and it's MHU. Linen has a frequency of 5,000. Wool has a frequency of 5,000 plus. Polyester clothes have a frequency of 15. So what that means is it's stealing electrons from your body like a slow dripping faucet, and it's constantly happening as we wear these clothes, creating a free radical inside the body, which is, you know, that unpaired electron, and glycation on every electron transference out of the body. And then it causes your body to have to use more ATP to create more energy. So now you're always fatigued and you're running out of ATP, and everyone's dealing with, you know, chronic fatigue syndrome. And a lot of it's because we're laying on these beds, we're sleeping on these sheets, and we're wearing these clothes all day, every day. I mean, I'm wearing wool caps now. My hair health has gotten so much better since I started wearing wool caps. Like it's like, because you've got a lot of oxidative stress inside your head as well. And that's where your hair is trying to thrive. So if you can mediate that oxidative stress, you're going to have healthier hair. But anyway, when you mix linen and wool, it creates dead fabric, dead frequency. It goes to nothing. And there's a really interesting study that was done on this by a lady named Dr. Heidi Yellen. So it's a really interesting study to look at. But yeah, so you look back, and then I started looking into the Bible. That's when I started looking into the Bible. Like, what other health tips are in the Bible? So I went with the Old Testament, and that made me realize that everything that we're doing now is corrupt. You know, like we're being pushed into pride and gluttony and all these things that it says do not do in the Bible. Yeah. We're moving in those directions full speed ahead, and we're calling it individualism or whatever you want to call it, but it's a destruction of the soul is really what it is. And then I obviously went on to the Old Testament, and then I went into the Book of Enoch and the Ethiopian Bible, and, you know, just really trying to, like, the same thing I did with chronic pain is trying to figure out, you know, the foundation of my faith. You know, is it more Gnostic or is it more traditional Christianity? Is it, you know, it's a lot of questions that I have when it comes to faith and religion and the Creator. Nice.
How can people get a hold of you?
So my website is www.undu.me. So undo me, undu.me. Or I've got a link in bio, lincoln.bio/Undu Method. And then, you know, when you go there, you can have access to that world's greatest shopping list. It'll take you to the coaching platform. And the coaching platform is basically, it's a series of videos that I've done, about 15 videos, and it goes through each of the pain makers, how you can cleave them at the chemical bond, what's causing them. I know it sounds like a lot of science, but if you watch it a couple times, it becomes very, you know them like your children. Like, it just, you know, it's in layman's term. It's not very scientific in the way I present it. And then I talk about why things like grounding and acupuncture and, you know, hyperbaric oxygen chamber, breathing through your nose. And everything I include the science behind it, right? It's like, this is why this works. And here are the studies that prove out these mechanisms of action, right? I'm not looking at outcomes from large groups of people. I'm looking at what does the biochemistry of the body, how does that respond when you introduce these supplements or foods into the body, right? I don't care that 90 people had better outcomes, because those 90 people could have done 90 different things to get those outcomes during that study. I want to look at a mechanism of action. But so you can find on the website on undu.me, you can be taken to my coaching platform. You can buy the supplement there as well. And if anybody's listening, if they use the code FLEX, they'll get $13 off the supplement. The program, there's a community of chronic pain warriors and warriors out there that I was part of, on Facebook and Reddit. And I was one of them. And so now I've come back to those pages and told people, hey, I've created a supplement for this. I've created a program for this. Every one of them have called me a scam artist, right?
Really?
You can't cure fibromyalgia. You're just some guy that's coming in here trying to sell his magic potion. And I'm like, no, I'm one of you. Like, I've suffered. I've, figuratively had the gun to my head. Like, I did not want to be on this planet anymore. And I'm here to give you hope and a solution. And it's a tough crowd. But
well, I bet, because they're still like
anxiety,
blind and want to go follow the doctors and think that they're gonna finally come through for them.
Yeah, and then they're in fight or flight. They're dealing with anxiety. Yeah. They're in anger mode all the time, and nothing's worked for them. They've probably tried almost everything, and but and I'll talk about some anecdotal stories about the supplement itself, because the supplement itself is the lowest, easiest barrier to try this, right? It works so quickly in providing the catalyst for these things that are causing chronic pain. I'm not going to claim it's going to heal you or it's a treatment or anything like this. What it is essential amino acids to provide the body with the support for healthy muscle tissue and fascia, and then a compound of like 6 other ingredients that are known in many scientific studies that are published to basically donate that electron or disrupt the electrostatic interaction, which is basically kind of like a magnet, of these most common pain makers or offenders that I call them. Yeah. And then once you can cleave that bond or disrupt that electrostatic interaction, the body can start slowly removing it from the body. So the supplement's like less than $50 if you use the code, and it's cheaper than most just essential amino acid supplements out there. The program, so people complain that I'm just trying to make money. So I was like, I know a lot of people dealing with chronic pain aren't working. So if you want to buy it and have it for life with all the updates, it's $196.33, and you get a free bottle of flexibility fuel. Or for $13.69, you can have it for a month and have it on a monthly basis. You can get through it in a week. If you screen record it, I don't care. Right? Like, give me something for 10 years of research, and like $13 should be enough. But It really is the most comprehensive approach to managing chronic pain, giving you the education so you can heal yourself, right? Yeah. Nobody can heal anyone except for yourself, right? You're the one that has to make the decision. You have to make the decision, get the shot, the thing in you're going to put into your mouth, whatever it is, that all. You're the gatekeeper there. So only you can heal you. So I'll never claim that I can heal anyone other than myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Final question.
Yes.
What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
Get delusional. Like, I am doing this. I am doing this. I am going to heal myself. I am going to make that money. And once you put it out there, it becomes part of the universe now. It's in the ether. It's in the energy. And you have to follow through, and it gives you the power to say, okay, I said to the universe, I'm going to do this. And now you're going to start searching. Like, use AI.
Yeah.
Man. Like really, like here's one thing I hope everybody does. Go to my website, get the ingredients from my supplement. And honestly, if you buy them on Amazon, I don't care. Like go get them somewhere, but just copy and paste them, put them into AI and say, how can this mix of compounds help manage chronic pain? And then just see what AI is going to tell you. I think you'd be surprised. It's going to be pretty powerful.
Awesome. Great advice. Well, Daniel, thank you for coming on here and sharing your story with us.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. I love your energy, man. Like you're a great host. Like I was telling you before, some hosts it's hard to have a conversation with, and there's no interest. They're just kind of putting a podcast out there. It's a great conversation, man. You're doing a great job.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here for today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.